This podcast was recorded before recent federal policy changes impacted many of the programs discussed and may not reflect the most current information.
Welcome to How to Not Kill Your Community, a podcast from the Delaware Community Foundation. In each episode, we interview experts to explore the choices we make as Delawareans, how we spend our taxes, steward our land, build housing, and how those choices impact the places we call home. What happens if we neglect our libraries, turn away newcomers, let philanthropy fade? Most importantly, how do we not kill our communities? I'm Stuart Comstock-Gay, President and CEO of the DCF. Thank you for listening. All right, welcome back to our podcast, How Not to Kill Your Community. And today, two people I admire so much and two organizations I admire so much, and we're going to get to talk about arts. And but before we do that, I need to introduce the two of you. Some people may not know who you are. Mariah is the producing artistic director of Delaware Shakespeare, better known as Del Shakes.
Yes.
Before she assumed this position in 2024, she was artistic associate and literary manager at the Wilma Theater in Philadelphia. An accomplished actress, she has played in a number of Del Shakes shows, among others, Midsummer Night's Dream, Julius Caesar, and she was in the title role in Macbeth, which was great, by the way. Has also been a member of the Del Shakes Artistic Squad, contributing to the organization's creative initiatives in a variety of ways, including being a teaching artist, developing new events, and directing short programs. And she's originally from the suburbs of Chicago, another Midwesterner, yes, an alumni of Vassar College. Patti Grimes, Executive Director of the Freeman Arts Pavilion and Carl M. Freeman Foundation. Under her leadership, the Freeman Arts Pavilion has welcomed over 1 million visitors since 2008. Rock on. Also oversees the Carl M. Freeman Foundation, which has granted over $60 million to nonprofit organizations, and Vice Chair of Delaware Technical Community College, board member of Leadership Delaware, and over 4 decades at Carl M. Freeman Companies, and you continue, and this, I admire this, to foster community engagement and cultural growth in the entire region. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
So what I really want to find out is, how can we kill our community? So the arts are nice, right? Yeah, it's a good thing. But they're often viewed as optional. And what happens if we stop funding, and why should we view them as anything other than optional?
Well, I would say the arts are essential. They're not optional. And so if you want to kill a community, having a mindset that it's optional would be predictable. And why the arts need to be funded is because not only do they unite communities, unite people together, they break down all these barriers, but they're huge economic drivers to the local economy, and they really support the development of children, as well as bringing hope and bringing people together who otherwise may not know one another in a community.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the arts are such a great way for us to find community, and that's something that's really crucial to the work that we do at Del Shakes. It's so important to be able to offer those opportunities for people to see themselves in the art. And if we don't have art that people can see themselves reflected in, they don't think that the arts are for them, which then leads to people thinking that the arts are unnecessary. So I find it so incredibly important to create these spaces of community, to have people come out, join together, and then what's really crucial is seeing yourself on the stage, being able to see yourself reflected in what's happening. And that is what kind of inspires people along the way, I think. Yeah.
So you both spoke to that, about the diversity of audiences, bringing a lot of people together, but often many arts organizations have a challenge of bringing in different kinds of audiences. And I don't mean just diverse racially, I mean class-wise, education-wise, urban, rural, suburban, all that different thing. What are some of the approaches both of you have used to get more diverse, broad audiences to come in? And what can we do to ensure that arts are available to everyone?
Of course. Yeah. So we do something called the community tour, which is really special to the work that we do at Del Shakes. We take the community tour throughout the entire state of Delaware, going to all 3 counties, and we visit non-traditional performance spaces. So we go to women's shelters, prisons. You brought up education, and we go to an adult high school where they work with people who are getting their GEDs. So we try really, really hard to get into different spaces where people otherwise do not have access to the arts. And I think that that's just one of those ways that when you're able to bring it directly to people, it really allows them to be able to remove some of those barriers like transportation and financial costs. It just makes it that much more accessible for folks to be able to reach right in and grab the art.
For us, we have 2 approaches to that at the Freeman Arts Pavilion. We have over 70 performances a summer, and so there really is something for everyone. With the diverse genres that we present, it's a way to engage people who might like jazz versus country or rock or hip hop dance. So that is a vessel for people exploring and discovering different types of genres, but also welcoming something that they may not be able to get in Sussex County, and they don't have to drive 2 to 3 hours for that. And then our other program is our Arts Access Initiative, like Delaware Shakes, that we're out in the community. And we have a very vibrant, strong arts education program where we serve over 25,000 students a year at no cost to the schools. And we are in schools making sure that children have the opportunity to receive arts education, and it's done with the core curriculum standards and assessments and all of that. And we actually started transportation grants for both in the schools, so that if we have an artist in residency in one school that really can command and hold a lot of students, then we can bus children in from other schools and leverage those nonprofit dollars while really immersing all students in the same type of art and bringing them together. And then we're actually, like Delaware Shakes, we go out into the community and take that artist that might be in residence in the schools and do some public performances at libraries or at public community centers as well. But it's really important to meet people where they are and to break down those barriers. So in the schools, for instance, when we have bilingual artists, because we have quite a few English as a second language, and for those children to feel welcome. I'd like to tell one little story.
Please.
We had a bilingual artist. Her name was Sonia de los Santos, and she hails from New York. Originally, she was from Mexico, and she was at this performance, and there were 2 little girls, and she started singing "This Land Is Your Land." We all know that song. And the little girl who looks more like me was all smiles and dancing, and the little girl next to her, who looked more like Sonia de los Santos, Latino, was sort of like, not as animated. And then all of a sudden, Sonia de los Santos started singing in Spanish. And that little girl came alive. And before you know it, I kid you not, the other girl, they started holding hands and singing, like jumping together. And that was a moment. So that's how to make vibrant communities, Stuart. Not killing a community, but bringing people together when you can understand who your community is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's such a great song for that purpose, actually. And I don't know if you've ever heard that Australian song, "I Am an Australian," which is, it makes me cry whenever I hear it, because it's "We Are All Australian," and go look it up on YouTube. It's a really powerful thing. So both of you are talking in one instance about people need to see themselves on stage, in the school performance. But there's also a piece which is that I think about, which is we've kind of been taught with our professionalized culture that art is something you watch, not something you do, because you have to be perfect or you shouldn't do it. Talk about how you fight that idea, because to me, making art is a big part of this.
Absolutely. That is something that I have firmly believed for such a long time. I think when I first started making art, I had a very similar mindset, very much perfectionist. I grew up dancing as well, so I had this idea of what everything had to look like. It had to be very precise. And I found along the way the groups and the ensembles where I was able to take what existed and kind of break it apart. That was where I was having the most fun, because those were the instances where I was able to take stories and make them fit for me and make them fit for my friends. And actually an early experience of this was I was doing a production of Twelfth Night, and me and my friends, we just like broke the entire play apart and put it back together and made it something that was so much more reflective of ourselves. We were able to tell our stories as like queer, non-binary, trans artists, but also being able to respect our own personal identities, where we come from, how we grew up. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons that sparked my interest in wanting to continue to make Shakespeare. So now at Del Shakes, I absolutely encourage people, no matter how perfect you feel or how much of a perfectionist you are, there's a place for you to be able to make art. And I think we're making professional theater with people across an entire background of experience. We bring in apprentices who are college students for the summer festival. We have professional artists who are working on making new shows and new music. So there's a lot of opportunities where we're trying to bring those people together to learn from one another. So yeah, completely agree.
Do we know why she's such a great actress on stage?
I'm telling you,
Do you hear that, right?
if you see she's going to be in a show, you want to see it.
Yes.
I appreciate that.
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
so
thanks.
inspiring. For us, I think about the visual arts that we present in schools and out in the community. And when you go into a classroom, you just sense that intimidation, right? Right. And so really what I love about passionate artists is that they know how to open up the conversation with folks, where doesn't matter what you're creating, that is your masterpiece, that is your own specialness that you're bringing to the collective whole. And so to me, and I see that with the performing arts at the Pavilion as well, when there are artists who are so passionate about what they do, they actually play to that audience and engage in that audience, where all of a sudden, you know, strangers are now friends. Mariah and I are sitting next to one another. We did not know one another before we came in, but the music starts to play. And the miraculous part about music is that we go back 50 years. You probably are not 50. I go back 50 years, and I remember word for word that song. I remember where I was, and I am singing and dancing with wild abandon with a stranger, because there is someone on that stage that wholeheartedly is enjoying what they do.
Yeah, I love that. So many directions we could go, but let me boil back or broader. Both of you talk in your mission and in who you are about community writ large. So what we've talked a lot about how it changes people's hearts and their own lives, but how does this build broader community in both of your cases?
Sure. So we started the Freeman Arts Pavilion in 2008. Michelle Freeman, our chair and founder, created that out of tragedy when her husband died. And our first year, Michelle had recruited me from the for-profit world and said, you know, would you do this? And I'm actually the child that we now serve, because I didn't have access to the arts when I was growing up. So I have learned all about the arts in 18 years, and it has transformed my life. And what I'm going to say about building community around that is we thought it was a social experiment initially. We're just going to see, is this something that is important to the community? because quite frankly, in 2008, Sussex County was an arts desert. There wasn't really any arts, very few arts available to us. And so that first year we programmed 42 performances and had 10,000 people. And fast forward to 2017, 108,000 people crossed over our threshold. And that helped create a community where the arts are not optional, they are necessary. People are requesting and so we build a community through supporters of the arts, advocates, through a volunteer corps. We have 280 volunteers who are making a difference in the community, and they are also developing relationships. We have a lot of retirees in Sussex County, and so we're giving people a purpose to make a difference for social change, social impact. The community is much healthier with the arts because when you go there, you're focused on something that's uplifting and hopeful, and you really, whatever you had and you were worried about before you came into a performance, you sort of release that for the moment. So there are many great things that are positive to the community, and I'm happy after Maria talks to talk about that economic impact.
I would like to hear, but let's go, Mariah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to talk a little bit about the theater community period, which tends to be one that
Which is its own thing.
But I think the theater community itself, it sets a really good example for what we are looking for and what we are trying to strive to create throughout Delaware. I moved to Philadelphia about almost 7 years ago now, and I knew nobody in the theater world, but now I have so many folks who I can pick up the phone and call, and I think that's exactly what we strive to do at Del Shakes as well, right? Similarly, we want to bring people together who maybe otherwise don't know each other, but when you leave the show at the end of that day, we're always encouraging people to turn to the person who you're sitting next to and ask them a question. What did you learn from the show? What stood out to you? Those kinds of moments of engagement are what really bring us forward. Because when you're able to connect over something that you just experienced together, much like you were saying, it helps us to be able to break down some of those things that maybe otherwise keep us apart. We go into a space, the Cottages, which is a juvenile justice space, and we did some teaching around Julius Caesar last year. Really great work to be bringing to juveniles. And they were a little hesitant. I was one of the teachers too.
How do I understand the words?
Exactly. They were like, this don't make no sense. I'm very uninterested. Who are you? But by the end of those 3 weeks, I was playing Marc Antony last summer, and we brought the Marc Antony speech to them, Friends, Romans, Countrymen. And I had like 3 students who jumped up and raised their hand and wanted to perform, and from there, they were creating more community within themselves. They were able to bond more and grow together. And then we had 3 of them come out to see the show as well. So it's really special to be able to find those places where we can have people sort of make those bridges. It's just so necessary.
So Patti, I want to come to the economy question, but I want to take another moment, and maybe just to make my own statement, but I'll be interested if you all both have reactions. Right now in this country, we're hearing a lot about divides, and economic divides, class divides, racial divides, partisan divides, urban-rural divides, all of that stuff, and I don't put one over the other. I think that we're getting distracted by partisan divides. That's not the most important thing going on. To me, there's a lot about education and other stuff that's more important. And when in a lot of the discussions I have, which is how do we bring people together around something other than what divides them? Because that's how you build community, by bringing them together somewhere to work on a common project, to share a common experience. And I think it's the leverage, it's the entry point to rebuilding a sense of broad community. Does that ring true for both of you?
Yes, I think arts are the great equalizer. So regardless of what the divisions are outside of the arts, I see it firsthand where it sort of goes by the wayside because people have made a choice to come to a performance or to attend a school performance or come to public art that we're doing out in the community. And it's all about that person having an experience that is a magical moment for them. And there are people, again, Mariah and I talk about this, where we don't. Strangers are united in the moment, and
we all love Chris Stapleton, right?
Yeah. Oh, do we?
do we? Right.
Yes.
Right. There's the
don't
unifier.
Make me burst out into a song.
Yeah. Right.
But
Please.
But the truth really is that it is a great equalizer and unifier of people.
Yeah.
Shakespeare was the king of that, right?
Right.
Shakespeare was the person who was writing these plays directly against the aristocracy. It was immediately like I was trying so hard to talk about what was happening around him with class, and he was writing for everybody.
Yeah.
That's something that's crucial to our mission, is we're trying to reflect that, how Shakespeare was able to bring so many different people together in those theaters. We want to be able to do the exact same thing. So I couldn't agree more.
Well, the amazing thing about Shakespeare, too, is that Shakespeare, I think, was getting pushed off onto a dusty shelf.
Yes.
But the new movement, in Minnesota Shakespeare Company, I think they were the ones who kind of kicked this idea off, saying it needs to be accessible. We need to kind of rethink how we present it so that it is useful for people in a homeless shelter or people in a prison or wherever.
So quick, I was just going to say, I think that people hear the word Shakespeare and they immediately turn off. They're just uninterested. And that's why it's so important to remind people that there's so much more into these stories. The reason they're still being done 400 years later is because they're stories that still exist. You can find those people and those stories in your own personal life. And that's something I'm always working to do. I'm not just going to bring us out and do Shakespeare and collars, We're doing Shakespeare at Wilmington Brew Works.
I know you are, yeah.
And that's a lot of fun. We do a lot of looking at adaptations and kind of taking time to pull them apart. So we're never trying to bring just Shakespeare. It's far more for the people.
I love that. If I could just add that as an arts organization, I applaud Delaware Shakes and all arts organizations who look beyond the present and the past and are in the front view mirror of what's relevant today. How do we innovate to adjust our sails so that we keep moving forward? And we see that with Opera Delaware has done a great job of that. Delaware Shakes has done that. We partner with a lot of Delaware organizations, including the First State Ballet Theater. They do wonderful adaptations to make the classics very approachable. And, whether you're symphonic or orchestral music, or you're more of those fine arts or 400 years ago, it makes no difference because those messages are just still so relevant and important till today. And so when we can make them contemporary and approachable, we're going to keep bringing people back in ways that they never expected.
So, Patti, you talked about more sales.
Yeah.
Talk about the impact of arts on the economy.
Oh, yes. So, I want to thank Thayer DuPont, actually, for pushing me about economic development. I had done a presentation and I had done some back of the envelope numbers about what I thought our economic development was, economic impact. And he said, I think you're doing great, but you're woefully understating that. I want you to go back and revisit that. So we commissioned a study with the University of Delaware, so we would have a third party do that. And what I can share with the audience is that for every dollar that we generate, almost $2 goes back into the local economy. And you think about, how is that so? Well, before someone comes to a performance, they may have dinner beforehand. After the performance, they may get that beer, they may get an ice cream, they might go to a retail shop and do something like that. So, in Sussex County primarily, the backbone of our economy is small business. So we're fueling those businesses to the tune of $24 million a year, just the Freeman Arts Pavilion.
Wow.
And we're driving tourism. We have patrons who wait till our season comes out to decide when they're coming on vacation because they want to see a show when they're there.
Yeah.
And so we get these calls of when are you announcing your summer, because we want to make our plans.
Kidding. Wow.
And so that tourism also has a myriad of falls throughout the community as well as economic driving.
Did you want to add to that?
I was just going to say, one, that's amazing. I love that. That has such a direct impact, and you can see that. That's so wonderful. I was going to talk about kind of the other side of how in crisis the arts are and funding for the arts.
That was my next question.
Oh, was it really?
Right, because the arts funding community is changing, or the arts funding environment is changing. So what do we do?
It's changing drastically, and I think we're in a pretty unreliable time right now with things that we've consistently counted on: corporate funding, grant funding. Things are changing with what they offer and what they do not. So we're really working to try to figure out, okay, what can we do? And I actually think what we can do is rely on our communities. I think it's so important to tell audiences this story, but I went to a theater once, dear friends work there, and they said, if we sold out every single seat in this house, every single night of every single performance, we would have to sell these tickets for $99 to everybody in order for us to actually make $2 of a profit. There is so much that goes into art making, and it is not just paying the artist that you see on stage. And we want to make sure that we're able to pay everybody livable wages. And so when we're in this moment of crisis of how do we navigate, we look back to the community and we really are asking folks to come out and support. Yes, buy a ticket. Tell your friends to buy a ticket. Donate when you can, but just continue to keep the arts alive and interact with us. As long as you are interested in being able to run out and go see your favorite music artists and go see theater, you have to be able to put back into it. And that's also what allows us to be able to make these educational programs as well, is if we have people interested, that's what can allow us to go into schools, get young people interested from a young age, and continue to build our audiences. When we don't have those moments of access right now, when people are turning away from one another, turning away from their communities, it just makes it that much more difficult for us to be able to continue.
I think that is such a, look, the federal funding situation is changing everything quite a lot. Whatever you say about it, it's making huge disruptions. And there are a lot of choices are going to be made, and dollars are going to be fewer. No matter what happens, dollars are going to be fewer for most things we care about. And so if you think of the arts as one of the critical community building institutions, community bridging institutions, and economic drivers, that has to be part of the solution, the ongoing solution, not something we'd say, put it aside, don't worry about that anymore.
Absolutely. And I do want to say that we're grateful for the Delaware Division of the Arts and Delaware Arts Alliance, because they are great advocates for all of the arts organizations in Delaware. And Delaware, the state of Delaware, has been very supportive of the arts, and we're so grateful for our state to know how important the arts are. Really, when you look at the per capita spending, I believe Delaware is in the top 10 on its population base.
Wow.
So
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, very, very grateful for that.
That's impressive. What did I miss? What else do you want to share with me, either of you?
I would love to share what we have cooking up for this year, if
Go
that's
for it.
okay. I actually just scooted over here. We're doing a workshop right now for our summer production, which is 12th Night O Lo Que Quieras. It is a bilingual musical adaptation of Shakespeare's 12th Night. We originally produced this for our community tour back in 2022, and I saw that production and I instantly broke out into tears at the first chords of the music, and I said, great, we have to do this again. So we're bringing it back now. They're doing some edits to the book and to the music, which is why we're having a workshop today. We're going to have some new cast members, some new direction. And instead of it being the community tour, it's going to be outdoors at Rockwood Park, running from July 19th through August 3rd. It is a beautiful, beautiful show. It does not matter if you speak English or Shakespearean or Spanish. It does not matter. It is truly a story for everyone. Again, rooted in that historical Shakespeare story, but it's so much more alive with what is present and happening right now, with real life conversations around immigration and finding your family and finding your people and finding yourself. It's a really, really beautiful piece. So would love to see folks out there for that.
That's great.
Yeah.
Amazing. I would just say to the audience is find your arts. There are so many arts available throughout the state, and they're many, many free performances. And also libraries are another place that there's a lot of cultural hubs as well. And you can support your community and this state by participating in the arts in any way that you can. And if you're interested and you're in Sussex County, just check us out at freemanarts.org. But the arts are for everyone to enjoy.
Thank you both, Patti, Mariah. Thanks so much for joining us here today. So if we want to kill our community, don't build stronger community. Don't think about economic development, and stop supporting the arts.
There we go.
That would do it.
Yeah.
Thank
you for having us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. How to Not Kill Your Community is a podcast written and produced by the Delaware Community Foundation. Thank you to our producers at 1440 Film Company in Wilmington. The Delaware Community Foundation, DCF, stands at the intersection of generosity and community transformation. As experts in community need, we guide individuals and organizations to opportunities that impact causes they care about the most. We manage charitable funds, distribute scholarships, advise donors, and grant to nonprofits, providing leadership to cultivate the future of philanthropy in Delaware. Visit us at delcf.org for more information.